Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. In international news, things are very tense in the Ukrainian region of Sumy. This is the region through which NATO and Ukrainian soldiers passed to enter the Russian region of Kursk. In this region, Russia has intensified its actions so much that Ukrainian army, the Ukrainian government has ordered the evacuation of more than 200 localities. More than 200 localities are currently being evacuated. In other words, this is to abandon these territories, to leave them at the mercy of Russia. So this clearly indicates that the protective buffer zone which President Vladimir Putin explicitly articulated and spoke about is indeed in the process of being established and created, and a profound and palpable sense of great fear is undeniably lingering and persisting in the hearts and minds of the local inhabitants. They are saying to themselves, what Russia has started here. So is this indeed the buffer zone that Vladimir Putin specifically talked about, which he wasn't entirely clear about? That would potentially extend approximately 200 kilometers from the Russian border, creating a significant security area. Or is it the buffer zone that the Vice President of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, spoke about? Because he said they would wipe out Ukraine until only a small part of Ukraine would remain at the level of the oblast in territories that are a bit closer to, I think, the Baltic Sea. So what is actually happening in this area? What does the intensification of Russian military activity involve? And which localities are affected, which are currently being evacuated? And what does this mean in terms of implications for the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are going to discuss in this video conference, which I ask you to share as much as possible. Give it lots of likes. You know how it works. Share the video conference as much as you can. Right now, I'm at the university, so I'm on a break. That's it. I'm on a break. So I took the time to address this very hot topic because it changes everything. Even the meeting scheduled in Istanbul on Monday will still take place. Let's dive deeper with the official information. According to official information and recent reports, Ukraine has now ordered the mandatory evacuation of an additional 11 villages following previous directives that had already ordered the evacuation of a substantial 213 villages within the broader Sumi region. This significant measure comes in response to the continued reinforcement of Russian troops and their military capabilities along the border areas. So what needs to be said is that Russia continues with intensity and terror its military activities in the border regions. And here is what the governor of the Sumi region says. He says this: Russia continues its terror with intensity in the border regions, and our shared mission is to save every life. He says, I urge residents not to delay the decision to evacuate. Staying in a zone of constant danger is a direct threat to your life and health. So that's the governor. What's his name? His name is Oleg Hydorov. It is this very influential governor who is actively advising citizens to leave their homes and seek safety. He strongly insists on this course of action. Today, the Ukrainian authorities are much more focused on protecting the lives of those living in this border region. So they are just evacuating. 213 localities. The order was given this morning to evacuate them, and this afternoon, in the evening, they again ordered the evacuation of 11 villages, because these areas are now permanently declared as danger zones. So quite naturally, these areas are becoming buffer zones. Let's go a little deeper still, but make sure you have shared the video conference. Make sure, have you given it a like? So the purpose of the evacuation is in response to the intensification of attacks and the Russian threat, and above all for the protection of civilians, which is a priority for Ukraine, according to what Ukraine says. So as we mentioned, as of May 31, 2025, 213 localities in the Sumy Oblast are under mandatory evacuation orders. And so, all of this is because Russia has intensified its attacks. There have been incursions. Russia has carried out incursions that have been reported in the Sumy Oblast since January, with advances and claims of capturing certain border villages such as Basivka, Novanka, Veselivka, Juravka, and many other localities. Beyond that, the region is subjected to constant shelling, ballistic missile strikes, and drone attacks. So there are so many attacks because Russia's strategic objective is obviously to create a security buffer zone along the border. So Putin wants to create a security buffer zone. This escalation on the Sumy side is putting tremendous pressure on the Ukrainian defense. So here's the official information, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the official information. This is what we are witnessing on the Sumy front. And so the Western countries are confused. Even NATO is confused. NATO no longer knows what decision to make. For now, everyone is praying to God that the line Russia is drawing, whether it's the 200-kilometer line, the buffer zone stretching 200 kilometers from the Russian border into Ukrainian territory, will be the limit. If that's the case, it's fine. Ukraine won't have too many problems. But if it turns out to be what the Vice President of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, said he claimed, they are going to annex all of Ukraine and that only 0.5% would remain for Ukraine, because he posted a map, which I made sure to share here. I'll see if I can share it again. He posted the newly redrawn map of Ukraine, where you can see that the entire country now belongs to Russia in the name of the buffer zone. So which buffer zone are we talking about? And what's happening in Sumy is an admission of failure. When we now see NATO ordering Ukraine to instruct its governors to evacuate the region, to leave the region to Russia, it means that the situation has taken a different turn. And if Russia manages to take these territories easily through the various evacuations, it means the rest of the territories will be evacuated in the same way. And like that, Ukraine will lose all its territories. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the top news story. So please share it as much as possible. I'll be back with more news for you shortly. That was the voice of your one and only samurai.